All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. Happy Thanksgiving to my American viewers here, if you celebrate it. So, hope you had a good one. So, anyway, excited to be with you guys. As I know, last month I didn't have the monthly conversation I do with my dear friend Carl Zha. I just came back from China. It was 2 days before that, and I wasn't up to it, so it wasn't fair that I will put Carl through that. So I decided, okay, we'll wait till next month. And here we are. So we are very excited. I'm going to just get into it, guys, because we don't have a lot of time to waste, because I like always to really get the insights from Carl that you guys can learn about. So let me bring in Mr. Carl Zha. Hi, Carl.
Hi, David. I'm actually excited
Good.
to hear about your China trip and your
Oh,
impressions.
yeah, I will share some with you. Why not, brother? So, very excited to have you as always here, Carl. I hope you are doing well. The family's doing well. The baby's doing well. I'm so he's growing, huh? They grow quick.
Very quick.
So, anyway, yeah. Well, we got a lot to cover, Carl, and I don't even know where to start. But let's start with this China trip that I did. As a matter of fact, I just want to share some things with you and the audience. Uh, I am working on something specific for the audience. I never disclosed what it is. It's in the works, and that's going to highlight my entire trip to China. So it's going to be in a form of a video that is very something special. So that's but just for you, Carl, to know, it was my first trip to China, and boy, was I surprised for what I saw. And what I saw was how much a government invests in its own country, in its own people, in its own infrastructure. That's what surprised me. Surprise, it's not the right word for it, because I've been reading enough about China to see what it is, and now I saw it with my own eyes. I just couldn't
I-
believe it. I couldn't believe it.
it's a totally different it's a big difference between reading about it and being there
Uh-huh.
firsthand experiencing it. I mean, seeing is believing. I this is why I always highly recommend to anyone to visit China. I mean, like you'll be eye opening if you haven't been there before.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's it's you felt that way when you went there, David.
And that's what it was. And I have a visa for 10 years. So I'm already thinking about next year to head out back there. One thing I want to share with you quickly before we're getting into it was literally, and I kid you not, Carl, you will understand more than anyone, even though you are familiar with the West and all that, about the level of energy that I felt walking into the streets, walking into the old town, for example, in Qibao, in Shanghai, walking in Guangzhou, walking in Shenzhen, and you feel this energy in the street, but I can't describe it. I can't describe it, but you feel
It,
it.
it yeah, you have to experience it firsthand. It's really hard to explain to somebody, say, who is in America, who has never been to China, because as soon
Yeah.
as you hit the ground in China, you feel like that dynamism, the bustling energy just like rush at you, and you feel like, wow, these people are, they have purpose in life. They're
Yeah.
going somewhere. Like you just feel it. It's very different. It's a very different type of energy when you go
Yeah.
to China.
And that's why, well, I was lucky because the first week it coincided with the national holiday. It
Oh,
was an
right.
Oh my gosh. I found out, you know what I found out, Carl? 500 million people traveled inside China for that week. 500 million. I was like, oh my God. And when I was in Shanghai, it was an orderly, no problems, no fights, no breakout. No, everybody's supposed to do what they're supposed to do, and everybody's enjoying the holidays and the level of energy for it. It was incredible. I enjoyed it.
and
I enjoyed it.
and in China, you can drink alcohol on the street. There's no restrictions, unlike United States. Like
Yeah.
you can actually hold a beer or hold a drink, walk into the street and drink in public. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's and they don't have problem. Like in United States, you have
Yeah.
fights probably, but in China, you could drink in
No, of
public,
course, yeah.
not a problem.
Yeah, there's no responsibility with that. But I did enjoy it. Chinese people were friendly to me. so kind, even though they don't speak my language, and you can just tell the body language. Literally, they're just so kind. So I don't know them; they don't know me. And to me, it was that, you know what it was, Carl? It was that human connection. That's all it was. The human connection. I didn't come across that like this arrogant American or whatever, because there was no need for that. Why? They are not a human being from another country. Just, and plus, I was a guest in that country, so I observed the laws, the respect to their traditions, and whatever. You can't cross in the street when it's a red light. Can't do that because out of respect for, that's how the rules are. Plus, it's kind of, if you do, the camera is going to see you and see you broke the law. You can't do that. So, but I did enjoy it. One of the big surprise, Carl, was when I had the chance by a manager of BYD allow me to do recording on the floor.
Wow.
Oh my gosh!
Nice.
Oh my God! You saw the cars? How luxurious for like $26,000. That's it. That's it. And I was
This is
like,
why Trump. This is why Trump and Biden will never allow Chinese EV in America. They will never allow it. That's why there's going to be 300% tariff on Chinese EVs, because they know if Chinese EV come to America, the big
people
three,
buying.
the Detroit,
Yeah.
they can't compete. They cannot
Yeah, they
compete
won't.
against that.
There is no way. When I saw that luxury car for that amount and the comfort on it and all this, I was like, heck, I will buy this in no time. One thing before I'll jump to our topic, Carl, I noticed in China something I didn't see. You know what I didn't see? Gas station. I didn't see gas station at all.
Wow.
At all.
Wow.
I didn't see it. So it was like,
Wow.
oh my God. It was incredible not to hear the combustion engines running, just everything quiet. It was so, and I ate the stinky tofu in China first time. I had it, stinky tofu. It was incredible. A
Who
pure, real
introduced
Chinese.
you?
It was one of
So
my
cute.
viewers from Canada. I said, Doctor, if you go, make sure you eat the stinky tofu. I had no idea what it was. So I checked it out. And I was
It's
like,
a
hey, I did. I did. And I had squid first time in the
ooh.
skewer. So I put some
Oh, those
short
are good.
videos
Those are
on.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I enjoyed it. I look
Nice.
forward to next year. So, all right, let's get on into our conversation. And once again, Carl, I can't thank you enough on behalf of the community for carving out time for us here, because this channel is about learning, and I always like the community to improve on its knowledge and so forth. And you are one of the regular here for the channel on a monthly basis to share with us your knowledge, and we are grateful to that. So let's start with I want to start with the first. Not a question, but rather I'd like to have your assessment about the recent APEC and G20 summit that concluded. What is your
Yeah.
assessment?
This
What is your feel about where things going?
I mean, it's a real sharp contrast to how US played its role in the APEC
Mm-hmm.
meeting and G20 versus China. Because when Xi Jinping arrived in Lima, Peru for APEC meeting, he
Mm-hmm.
announced the completion of the 3.5 billion megaports, the Chancai megaports, China just completed for Peru. And the next day, Tony Blinken, in order not to be outdone, he came out with an announcement that United States is helping city of Lima building a passenger rail line, right? And sounds very good. Well, it's like, wow, US is actually doing something. And so when people start digging around what Tony Blinken is actually talking about, he's talking about the Caltrain in California that's retiring its older diesel engine cars because the Caltrain's finally getting electrified. So they have these old obsolete diesel engine cars. They're selling. They're not giving them away. They're selling them to Lima, Peru for $6.3 million. So that's what they meant by helping city of Lima building a passenger line. The United States is not helping them building a rail line. they're selling them some old diesel engines, and they
Yeah.
try to pass it off as like, oh, look what we have done for Peru. Forget about the Chinese megaports, only a few $billion. We have these like nice diesel engine car for sale. It's ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous comparison. And the port that China built in Peru will fundamentally change how the commerce will be conducted throughout South America, because it's not only a port for Peru. It's going to be a port for all of South America. About 40 to 60% of the traffic is going to be coming from outside of Peru. It's going to come from Brazil, come from Bolivia, Chile, all the surrounding countries. And the northeast Brazil, where there's a lot of agricultural produce that gets exported to China, traditionally they will have to go through Panama Canal, which is congested. Often they have to wait. And then after they get through Panama Canal, sometimes they have to go to the mega ports in big ports in Mexico or Los Angeles, where they get loaded on super containers, then to China. Now they can just ship across the Amazon. There's already a transoceanic highway linking Brazil and the port in Peru. So all these trucks can haul the containers across the Andes, loaded onto ships in the megaport. So one of the things this megaport is it can handle the world's largest container ships. The reason, it's not just a port, because some ports they cannot handle larger ships. This port can handle world's largest container ship. Those ships can't even go pass through Panama Canal. And the reason traditionally the agricultural produce from northeast Brazil, after they go through Panama Canal, they have to go to the port of Los Angeles to get reloaded, is because some of the biggest ships cannot pass through Panama Canal. So now all this agricultural product in Brazil, they can completely bypass Panama Canal. They'll just get on trucks, get loaded, dropped off in the port in Peru, load and go directly to Shanghai. It will shave off the traffic for 15 days. That's 2 weeks. They can shave 2 weeks off the transit time, which is huge, especially for agricultural products. And there's a lot of agricultural product that Brazil is exporting to China. And this is not the end, because currently the transoceanic highway that crosses the Andes still have limitations. Some of the bigger trucks cannot go. So China is in talk with Brazil, Peru, etc. They're going to build a transoceanic railway that connects northeast Brazil, southeast Brazil, all funnel through the Andes to the port. And China has a lot of experience building rail, especially punching holes through mountains. China built a high-speed rail in Tibet. So they will be able to provide the expertise and the capital to connect the whole region. And it's such a big deal that it has U.S. politicians worried. The Trump advisor is saying now they're not only just going to slap tariffs on Chinese goods, they're going to slap tariffs on any goods that come out of the Shanghai port in Peru, which is completely ridiculous. I mean, but that's kind of the U.S. mentality, zero-sum mentality. The port, they always say, oh, China is trying to control South America through the port. But look, it's a port on the ocean. It's not just the Chinese ships that will come in. Anybody can come in to use the port. The whole point is increasing global connectivity. And U.S. has nothing to compete with that. The Caltrans diesel engine, that's a joke compared to this port. And then you have, of course, Biden's usual performance, wandering after giving his speech, wandering off in the Amazonian jungle, providing the comedy hour. That's like Xi Jinping came to Peru. Xi Jinping can go to Brazil. He gets highest honor, right? And whereas Biden during the G20 family photos, Biden was late, so they just took the photo without Biden.
Well,
You
hey,
have all these
they,
journalists yelling on the side, like, "Wait, you have to wait for Biden now. Can you take picture?" Like, no, well, let's just take pictures, and then they
move
take
on.
picture and left.
Move
Like,
on. Yeah. Well,
exactly.
I did during that time of when President Xi Jinping inaugurated the port. There were comments coming out of Washington, and I remember one specific one, and I'm paraphrasing here, stating the likes of U.S.'s concern about China's influence in the U.S. backyard. And I was like, hold on a second. Hold on a second. What the heck are you guys saying? What backyard are you talking about? That's Latin America. Those are sovereign states. But right there also became clear to me that the mindset in Washington still operates on the Monroe Doctrine, that it never left. And I kind of like the world has changed.
And the physical distance between Shanghai Port, which China built, to United States is 6,000 kilometers.
Kilometers.
I mean, that's a what kind of backyard is that? 6,000 kilometers away.
Yeah, it didn't make sense when I heard that. And right there, it became clear to me they are really not understanding, whomever those issuing those policies or those statements, that they don't have a grasp of the need for the economic developments. And I think that's why Peru wants, as a matter of fact, Carl, and correct me if I'm wrong in my assessment, with this outcome, with what you just stated, do you believe that's why Argentina wanted now to go back to China? Is this why?
So Javier Milei, the Argentinian president, before he came to the presidency, he's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna deal with those commie bastards in China. I want to have nothing to do with them." But recently, but then China came through with a currency swap that saved Argentina from bankruptcy. And recently, Javier Milei had an interview with economists, and the economist journalist asked him, let me tell me about your relationship with China. He said, "It's great. These guys, they didn't ask any questions. They didn't, they're happy to do investment, and they're not even asking anything in return. It's great. It's awesome." And then the journalist like, "Wait, didn't you say something about China, the government of China, before you became president?" And he said, "Oh, okay, it's trade. Trade is exchange between people. It has nothing to do with government." And he was backtracking furiously. Basically, that's how China does business with anybody. China's business is business. They came here to trade. They don't come here to interfere your domestic politics. They don't care about your domestic politics. They could care less whether the Javier Milei wants to do like any kind of cuts internally, whatever.
Yeah.
China don't care. China just okay, we know Argentina had a lot of agricultural commodities. We want to buy those agricultural commodities, and we're willing to give you top dollars for it. That's it. It's very simple. This is why like Javier Milei was surprised. I mean, he's the president. It tells you what kind of homework he did. But he was surprised, like China just literally came in, no string attached, provided the investment, provided the currency swap, and saved Argentina's ass, essentially. So this is why China's business model has a lot of appeal across the global South. And this is why United States and Western countries find increasingly difficult to compete with that, because usually the IMF and World Bank will place very stringent requirement. They usually require to privatize, to cut your public funding, cut your education, cut your healthcare, and cut pensions. China's investment come with no strings attached. So this is why they complain about Belt and Road Initiative all the time. They think this is a nefarious Chinese plot to take over, but really it's because United States find increasingly difficult to compete.
Well, speaking of the IMF, and Argentina is the example, I remember when they got the loan back in the 80s, that loan has not been paid yet. And Argentinians were like furious because it impacted their livelihood. And we all saw what happened of that. So you're absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, Carl, just to move to another topic, but within the same theme, when we talked about China just thinks about business, you were aware of the technical stopover of President Xi Jinping in Morocco on his way back to China. So, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Wasn't 2 years ago that the royal palace turned down the offer from China to develop the city of Tangier? And China said, sure, no issues. If you don't want it, that's fine with that. And now, all of a sudden, they are welcoming President Xi. And what's the catch there, in your opinion?
So China always have tried to engage North Africa, but traditionally
Mhm,
China's biggest trade business partner is mostly two countries, Egypt and Algeria, because China has a long-standing history with
mhm,
both Egypt and Algeria, dating back from the days of anti-colonial struggle, because China supported Algeria in its independence against France, and China has supported Egypt during the Suez Canal crisis.
you know, crisis.
And and now China is trying to branch out. But Morocco is an interesting case because Morocco is one of the North African countries that has closest tie with Europe. Traditionally, Morocco has a very strong tie with Europe. And now at this particular juncture, European lawmakers in EU, they're trying to shut out the Chinese EV from the European market by placing
Mhm,
high tariffs, at
mhm,
behest of Washington, basically, because Germany didn't want to do that. Germany actually voted against putting tariffs on EV, but France, Italy, and everyone else voted for it. And Morocco is located in a strategic location in the South Mediterranean. It's very close to the European market, and it has large lithium and phosphate deposit, which are
mhm,
the essential ingredient to make batteries for EVs. So the Chinese EV, Chinese European battery maker Goshen High Tech, they announced back in June to build Africa's first gigafactory factory just north of Moroccan capital at a cost of $1.3 billion. And that's not the only one. There's another Chinese battery maker, BTR, that's building
mhm.
$300 million cathode factory in Morocco. And another Chinese anode producer, Shinzoom, is building $690 million anode factory in the country. So these are not small change. There's a lot of
Yeah.
Chinese investment coming to Morocco to leverage the Morocco's lithium and phosphate deposit. They're producing for batteries for making EV. And one of the thing I think this is one of the strategy for China to getting around the EU tariff on Chinese produced EVs is to try to produce them locally. They're building
Mm.
EV factories in Serbia, in Hungary, and they can be supplied by the batteries factories in Morocco. So they're building a whole connected regional supply chain in the Mediterranean region, and and Morocco being one of the country that has closest tie with the West, with Europe,
Yeah.
is a perfect launching point. So this is why Xi Jinping made a short stop
Yeah.
in Morocco to shore up the relations.
Yeah, but will be there some sort of a geopolitical angle to President Xi's trip to Morocco? Because the way I look at it, Carl, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the way I'm looking at it geostrategically is also that President Xi Jinping is aiming also at pushing the EU out of the African market. Will it be fair assessment?
Well, I think it's both ways. One is why
Hmm.
this is there's a business opportunity, right? For China, business is always business, and two,
Hmm.
it's Morocco has a strategic location being close to Europe to act as a suppliers for batteries for EVs to be exported to Europe, and if the Europeans are not investing in this, then why not us? That's for China.
Mm,
North Africa is always very important for both its a strategic location, being it's very close to
yes,
Europe, and it's close to the Middle East, which is vitally important to China. I mean, China just have an interest for all different kind of reasons to
yeah,
develop relations in the area, and they are diversifying. Like I said, traditionally their strongest partner is Egypt and Algeria, but now they're also trying to branch out to the rest of North Africa. But whether it's to push out Europe, I think I mean, when Europe is not investing and China is, it just happened kind of
yes,
naturally. That just happened. It's because for whatever reasons, European multinationals they're hesitant to put a lot of capital in Africa because whether they feel like it's not stable or for whatever reason. Whereas China is willing to come up with the money. It's like the Jerry Maguire movie. Show me the money. Show me the money.
show me the money.
Chinese is the one that's willing to put the money up front. So of course they're going to win out. And this is actually a good opportunity for Africans, because before their source of funding and investment had primarily been Europe. They didn't have out much elsewhere to turn. Now
Hmm.
China provided alternative. So this is a competition. If Europe want to retain its traditional influence in Africa, well, you either put up or shut up. You got better put up some money, some real money to
Money.
to compete with China for the same influence.
Mhm. Very interesting. I just had to think about that because I was aware of what took place 2 years ago. But you're absolutely correct. If China's thinking only in terms of business, hey, they're gonna move forward with it. If countries wants to sort of prosper economically, they will get involved with the Chinese ventures and so forth. Let's go back to. I'd like to get your take on. We're gonna go back to APEC again, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting that I know it took place. Why? But by the way, guys, I did a video for you about this. This is different here because that's why we have Carl here, because we wanted to have a different insights for you to expand that knowledge, and that's the reason why I wanted to address this topic here. So if we are to think about the meetings President Xi has conducted with specific key leaders of the Southeast Asia, like Lawrence Wong of Singapore, like the Prime Minister of Thailand, like also the what's his name from Latin America, and another one from, I think, the Prime Minister of Japan, if I'm not mistaken. I want to specifically focus on Thailand. Where do you see the importance of this meeting that took place, and what could come out of it moving forward?
Well, first of all, for Thai government, this is very important because there has been a problem with political instability in Thailand
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
the past few years. So a new government in Thailand has been installed with a new prime minister, and by meeting with the world leaders like Xi Jinping, this helped bolster her own legitimacy at home. And Thailand traditionally has a very close tie with China, economically and also militarily, because Thai military
Hmm.
purchased their navy warships from China and tanks, and so it's very vital to see that the current government is on good terms with China. But China always work with any legitimate government. They're interested. They're not interested in internal Thai politics, so they will make deal
Yeah.
with whoever is Thailand's government, who is representative of Thailand. So in a way, Thailand and China, they're reconfirming their traditional relationship, which has been very close, and it will only grow closer with now there's a wave of Chinese investment coming to Southeast Asia. A lot of people don't know, but China's largest trading partner is no longer United States. It's ASEAN. ASEAN being the nations of Southeast Asia,
Yeah.
and Thailand is placed right in the center of ASEAN, and so China is Thailand's largest foreign trade partner, largest foreign investment source. So there's a very it makes sense for the new government of Thailand to work closely with China on bilateral issues. So this is why like this meeting is important for both countries.
Very, very, and I was very surprised to see that one. So let me shift the gears here towards Indonesia because it's very important, especially with the recent trip of Prabowo to Beijing. And I know he was given the red carpet treatment. To me, I pay attention to this kind of details. It signifies a lot. And the reason for that, I'm like thinking about this one, is because the deals that China and Indonesia agreed upon, those are economic worth about $10 billion to my knowledge. So is Indonesia, in your opinion, setting the tone for Southeast Asian nations, including those in ASEAN, to kind of, this is not about choosing China or America, it's just setting the tone for what President-elect Donald Trump is saying, that is going to impose the 60% tariffs on China, but also his policy towards Southeast Asia in general term. Is this what Prabowo was aiming at?
So I already mentioned ASEAN is China's largest foreign trade partner now, and Indonesia happened to be the largest country in ASEAN. It's actually the fourth most populous country in the world, just after China, India, United States. And it has a huge population. It's one of the largest country in Southeast Asia. You know, if you superimpose a map of Indonesia on the map of Europe, Indonesia will stretch from the city of London to the border of Afghanistan. Indonesia is huge. It has a lot of resources. It has tons of resources, both in minerals and oil and gas. And it's also the largest recipient. China is the largest foreign investor in Indonesia. So when Prabowo was first elected, when he was still president-elect, he immediately made a trip to China. And in Prabowo's own words, he was expecting to be like an informal trip, like where he's just being introduced to Chinese leadership. He was surprised back then as a president-elect. He received a big warm welcome, from Xi Jinping. And so his first state visit right after he became the president is to China. And that's a big signal. That's an important signal to show how Indonesia values this relationship. And of course, China rolled out the red carpet for him. I watched the whole welcoming ceremony, and I saw a lot of comments from Indonesians. They're like, "Oh, we're so proud!" Like China is really showing the respect to the leader of Indonesia, and what Indonesia wants to do is just like what every other Southeast Asian nations. They want to be able to trade with both China and United States. And this is very important because this is at the time when Donald Trump is saying they're going to put 60% tariff on all Chinese products. And so already a lot of Chinese factory owners, they're already coming to Southeast Asia. This process is only accelerated by the trade war initiated by United States. Before, or when the wage labor goes up, cost goes up in China, there was already you are seeing offsource labor intensive manufacturing from China to Southeast Asia. But the U.S. tariff will accelerate that process. So there's a lot of Chinese investment going to Vietnam, Indonesia, all the Southeast Asian countries that have a large surplus labor, and these countries, because the Chinese producers will come to these countries, set up infrastructure, then set up factories, and then they will continue to export to United States. And so if you look at the trade figures, if you look at the trade numbers between, if you look at the decline of U.S. China trade, it's kind of made up by the rise in the trade between U.S., Southeast Asia, and Mexico. And then if you look at the trade number between China and Southeast Asia and Mexico, those numbers match almost perfectly. So what that means is that those Chinese goods that previously get export directly to United States, now they take a round trip. They go through Southeast Asia. Now they're produced by Chinese-owned factories in Vietnam, in Indonesia, and then get exported to United States. Now, this process benefits Southeast Asia. This benefits countries like Vietnam, like Indonesia. It provides jobs, and it also provides infrastructure, because Chinese firms are not only going there just to set up manufacturing. They're also trying to build up the infrastructure which enable the manufacturing. Like I already mentioned here, my electricity here is provided by Chinese built power plants in north of Bali, and we're running on Huawei built 4G network. They already have 5G in the center of Bali, but I live in the boondocks, so I only get 4G where I am. But everything is built by Huawei, and China is also helping Indonesia to reach its goal, to reach its ambition to be the big cobalt and nickel producer. So traditionally, Indonesia, they export raw materials, they export ores, nickel and cobalt ore, which will be refined elsewhere because Indonesia lacks the refining capability. But Indonesia passed a law saying we're no longer going to export nickel abroad. And so the goal is to be able to refine themselves to capture more of the profit margin. So this attracted a lot of Chinese investment. Now, Chinese investment dominate the cobalt nickel processing factories in Indonesia. So China is helping Indonesia to set up its own refining capability, so it no longer has to export this ore abroad to be refined. All these cobalt and nickel will be refined in Indonesia, and cobalt and nickel are very important for EV batteries. They're very important for EV, and Chinese EV makers like BYD, they're also coming to Indonesia to set up factory to produce EVs. Biden, EUs are slapping 300% tariffs on Chinese EV, but it doesn't matter. Right now, this is why you don't see Chinese are not exporting EV directly to United States. The only Chinese-made EV that's exporting to United States right now is Tesla. Okay, Tesla is the one that takes a hit because there's a lot of their EV in the Shanghai Gigafactory. But a lot of the Chinese branded EVs, they are exporting to global South countries like Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, and like Brazil and Mexico. And so Indonesia is a recipient a lot of these Chinese investment, and they're benefiting also as an intermediary when when the U.S. tariff hits. all these manufactured goods going to reroute from China, then re-exported from Indonesia to United States. So this is why Prabowo, he understands this. He's treating this China-Indonesia tie he's taking it very seriously. This is why his first trip abroad, his first state visit is to China. China also understands this relationship is very important because Indonesia is only the largest country in Southeast Asia. It's also the largest Muslim majority country in the world, right? So in many ways, China wants to improve its continually upgrade its relationship with Indonesia. Like China already built a high-speed train from Jakarta to Bandung, and there's a highly likely possibility they're going to extend that high-speed rail from Bandung to Surabaya and probably it's going to be another Chinese project to complete that. So
Wow, that's probably will cut the travel by. I don't know how far is the distance, but if I am to think in terms of Beijing and Shanghai, 4 hours and you are with the high speed train, which to me it's incredible. Wish we
yeah,
had
the
something like
current
that here, Carl.
well, the current speed of the Jakarta Bandung high speed rail is 350 kilometer per hour. So
Wow.
it's funny because whenever Indonesia has high speed rail travel before United States, right? Like people
Yeah.
often think about Indonesia as third world country, but guess what? Indonesia have high speed rail. United States doesn't.
Yeah, which usually that reflects on where the country is economically speaking. So now, before we move out to another topic, I still want to go back to this issue of not an issue, rather, it's just the visit of Prabowo. And I read some white papers and all that. That's how I keep up with all this stuff. The deal that they signed, the $10 billion deals that Prabowo signed during his visit to Beijing. Now, there are some who argued, and those are from Western think tanks. And I just want to get your take here because I like to provide both sides of the argument. There are those who argued that these deals sort of include controversial agreements on economic activities in areas surrounding Natuna Islands in the South China Sea. We all know where the issue is. And what I want to get your take on this, Carl, because you are in the area, you live there, you know how it is. I would like you just to provide my community here with the understanding of this. Why is this controversial? And tie it to the maritime law that Marcos Jr. just signed.
So
What does it mean?
first of yeah, so you're right. You're absolutely right. A lot of the Western-funded think tanks, a lot of the Western-leaning
Mm-hmm.
liberals, especially,
Mm-hmm.
they're criticizing Prabowo's agreement with China in terms of settling the maritime dispute in South China Sea. Now, uh, officially, Indonesia and China do not have territorial dispute. Natuna Islands is Indonesian territory. China do not dispute that. What is this in dispute is there's a dispute about exclusive economic zone (EEZ).
Yeah.
According to the uh, UNICLAS, the UN's law convention of the
Mm-hmm.
sea,
Mm-hmm.
each country get to define like 200 nautical miles from your territory can be defined as your exclusive economic zone,
So,
right? But that's if there's no counterclaim. But if there's another country whose territory kind of
mm-hmm.
with like 400 nautical miles, and then there's an overlap of claims, and that's where you have a maritime dispute. Um, and so
Yeah.
this is the case. The case is about maritime dispute about fishery rights, basically fishing rights and the rights to exploit deposit in that maritime zone. So it's first of all, it's not a territorial dispute. It's a maritime dispute regarding
Yeah.
to exclusive economic zones. Now, Prabowo and Xi Jinping signed an agreement says, let's put aside our disagreement. Let's do a joint development of these areas. Where both China,
Mm-hmm.
Indonesia putting capital to jointly develop the deposit of this area,
Yeah.
which very sensible, very
Mm-hmm.
sensible plan. Like let's put aside our disagreement, our dispute. Let's both explore this area together. Let's both like jointly develop this area. This is what I would say, this is kind of model resolution for how people
Mm-hmm.
should be solving this dispute. But people are now calling Prabowo, say, oh, he's selling out the Indonesian interest, whatever. But it's a very pragmatic solution, I would argue, because what happened currently when
Yeah.
area under dispute is really neither side get to develop it, right? Like because of the dispute, there's neither side get to enjoy the resources in the disputed area.
Mhm.
This is two sides sitting together and say, let's let's both enjoy exploring this area together. We can both put our capital together to do a joint exploration. And this could mean like a joint exploration of possible oil and gas deposit in the region, because
Mhm.
South China Sea is known to have some deep sea oil and gas deposit. Now these kind of exploration require a lot of capital. It's very capital
Yeah.
intensive upfront, because the deep sea drilling is not cheap. It's not like Saudi Arabia, just dig a well and the oil come up.
Right.
And you need to have a lot of capital investment to build like deep sea oil rigs and stuff to first find the oil and then to get it out of
Mhm.
the deep crust. And that requires a lot of capital. This is where China and Indonesia can work together, where China can provide the capital, for example, to do this kind of exploration. This is very sensible. This is kind of the China's proposal for most of the South China Sea disputes. It's like, let's do joint exploration, joint exploitation of the resources. But again, we know Washington has vested interest to stir up the hornet's nest by by trying to blow up all these kind of dispute, like what they're doing in the Philippines. They're weaponizing the very similar dispute between the Philippines and China over this maritime claim to weaponize it, so U.S. get to place intermediate range missiles in the Philippines. That was have always been the U.S. goal, to place U.S. troops in the Philippines to come back to deploy American military hardware asset in the Philippines. But right now, throughout Southeast Asia, outside of the Philippines, rest of the
Mhm.
government all want to work with China. This includes Indonesia, this is including Malaysia. Malaysia also has maritime dispute with China in South China Sea, but you rarely see
Mhm.
these two making a big deal out of it. It's very quiet. The Malaysia is working very closely with China. They recognize that both have dispute, but they're not sending in their navy ships
Maybe.
to have
Yeah.
water cannon fight the way that Philippines is doing. And we know the only reason Philippines is doing that is because U.S. is pushing them to do it. Even when China tried to resolve the issue, like back in, remember last time I think I was on talking with you, I talk about a brief solution where China
Yeah.
sat down with Philippines, say, hey, let's return to 2014 gentleman agreement, where we allow the Philippine Navy ship to bring supplies, but you have to promise not to bring building material. So after that, there was one successful Filipino Navy supply ship run without interference from Chinese Coast Guard. But immediately after that, U.S. came out with $500 million military aid to the Philippines,
Yeah.
and Marcos changed his line, and the conflict is back on again. So it's United States that's stirring the pot. But the other countries in the region, they're not biting it. They're not biting. They're all trying to work with China on this issue.
Yeah. Well, Philippines is easy target because let alone the amount of corruption or the massive amount of corruption that exists within their elites. So we find it very convenient to use it as like other countries, the likes of Australia and Japan and South Korea, and you get the idea. So that's the. So I was just very, very wondering how this is going to work with those white papers that I read, specifically focusing on this area regarding South China Sea, knowing that, which I had an understanding of and knowledge about, the idea of the oil and gas in South China Sea and how the U.S. will be pushing Philippines to the forefront regarding those settled tensions. Now, like I always wonder now, what will Trump policy towards Southeast Asia is going to be? How the country is going to now navigate this kind of, because it's a delicate matters, and we all know all this aimed at China. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to address this with you. So
Well, I
now,
don't think
let me
Trump
talk.
has
Let me
a
yeah.
okay, so I don't think
No,
Trump
go ahead,
actually has
Carl.
a concrete. I don't think Trump has a concrete policy towards South China Sea. Let's face it. Like he probably not even aware what the issue is. He will just let his cabinet handle it. And now we know his cabinet full of neocons. So
Oh
it's
yes,
gonna be the same as nothing is gonna change. Basically, the U.S. foreign policy is gonna be the same. They're gonna have the same hard on for conflict with China and
yeah,
all that posturing about being the anti-war candidate, that Trump, that's all bogus. This is we've seen it now. It's all about staying the line. The U.S. is gonna do the same thing it has always done.
yeah. And in this case, using the Philippines, and I hope it looks like with the. I mean, I don't know. It's the Filipino people that have to decide, but there's already. I had on the channel here Miss Anna Malanda. She's a writer for the Manila Times, and also she's very very knowledgeable. So, and to my surprise, I didn't realize how many Filipinos listen to what she has to say. I really was very surprised. So it became clear to me that there are tensions inside Philippines. Those who are saying, "What the heck with Marcos? What is he embarking or dragging the country into?" And
There,
so it'd be interesting to say
there,
what lies ahead.
there's a big tension right now between the vice president of the Philippines, Duterte's daughter, and Marcos. And
Oh my God!
the big headline recently is uh, um, the vice president of the Philippines, who
Yeah.
happened to be Duterte's daughter. She said that there might be a plot to kill her, but she said if she gets taken out, if she gets assassinated, then she will make sure there will be payback for Marcos. That if she gets
Wow.
taken out, then Marcos will be next.
Wow. Yeah.
Now it's a big political issue in the Philippines,
Yeah.
because the Duterte Baba Marcos, initially
Yeah.
during the election, he tried to align himself with Duterte's policies and factions. And that's why
Mm.
Duterte's daughter ran as his vice president. But now there's a very visible split between the Duterte family and the Marcos, and there's a lot of internal opposition to
Mm.
Bongbong Marcos in the Philippines. We'll have to see how that pan out. Of course, United States have a lot of influence in that country. They're gonna back Marcos to the tilt, but like you say, it's up to the Filipino people to decide.
People, yeah. And I met some Filipino people in China, and when sort of start to mention few things, without going into detail with them, they kind of, I could tell how pissed they were about where the country is headed, economically speaking. And they had no love for Marcos Jr. as far as his alignment with the United States. And they kind of like, wow. And it's like, yeah, we don't know where he's dragging our countries for. So, let's address one last topic here, Carl, before I let you go. And this one has to do, I am following a story development. By the way, guys, I might do a video for you next week. I haven't decided yet till I confirm some information. And before I do that, but I wanted to address it with Carl because it just came under my radar literally about this morning. So this one has to do with AUKUS in Guam. Now, if you are to think about a USS aircraft carrier, or USS in this case, Minnesota in Guam, especially when you consider the Virginia class capabilities will be brought to the Western Pacific. What does it mean? What are we looking at here, Carl?
Well, Guam is U.S. forward base right now
Mm-hmm.
in the Western
Mm-hmm.
Pacific against China. I mean, like even back in the Donald Rumsfeld days, at that time he was talking about pulling back from Okinawa to shore up Guam because Okinawa is too exposed. It's too close to China, and because it falls squarely within the range of the Chinese missiles that can be launched from Chinese mainland. So the idea is to build up Guam as this giant military base, U.S. forward base for Western Pacific, because they don't expect to hold Okinawa. The recently the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Admiral has said, he was quoted by General Petraeus, I think in Washington in Wall Street Journals or Washington Post. He was quoted saying, "Oh, we can turn the Taiwan Strait into a hellscape for the Chinese by using the thousands of unmanned vessels, unmanned drones, and et cetera, et cetera." So he was questioned about this in a recent interview, and they say, they questioned about him, the hellscape. He said, "Well, yes, the real problem is what do you do afterwards? You still have to maintain air and sea superiority in order to protect our base in Okinawa." And then he said, "How do I do that? How the hell do I do that?" I mean, he basically admitted, talking aloud, a reality that many military observer knows. Like, you are all going to be in the target zone of coming from within the range of the Chinese missiles that could be launched from the Chinese mainland. It's and of course, this talk of hellscape is ridiculous. I mean, how are you going to compete with China in terms of drone production? You're not going to compete with China in manufacturing capacity. Like. The ship. Okay, we already know the shipbuilding. China has 230 times the ship building capability than United States. That's building regular ships. If you want to talk about manufacturing of drones, China have all these like lights off automated factory that can crank out cruise missiles and drones like nonstop 24/7. How can you compete with that? It's kind of ridiculous to think that U.S. can compete with that kind of manufacturing capability. And so now that's why they're talking about, okay, building up Guam, leveraging AUKUS, leveraging our Australian allies. What they're really talking about is, the whole AUKUS deal is centered around selling nuclear submarines to Australia. But Australia is actually not going to receive this nuclear submarine until like 2040 or something like that. But so it's not really about Australia receiving the nuclear submarines. The deal is, in order for Australia to receive the nuclear submarines, they have to build a nuclear submarine base in Western Australia in Perth. So in those 20 years, while Australia are not receiving their nuclear submarines, in those 10-20 years, American nuclear submarine will be able to park themselves in Perth in this nuclear submarine base that Australia is going to build for them. So this is the whole deal is Australia is paying for the privilege of hosting American nuclear submarines on their own soil. And a lot of Australians understand this. They know this is a raw deal, but the Australian leadership have been so captured by Washington, there's not much they can do, which is really crazy because Australia's economic lifeline is tied with China. China is their largest export market, and they want to do what? They want to use nuclear submarines to do what? To sink all the ships that's shipping iron ore from Australia to China. It's ridiculous, but this is what United States is trying to use their allies or vassals as expendable resources during a conflict. The idea is, it's going to be Japan, Okinawa, Australia, Philippines. It's going to be these countries that's going to acting as a sponge to absorb the Chinese incoming Chinese missiles. So there will be less missiles hitting the American fleet, hitting Guam. That's the idea. But yeah, hopefully you will never come to that. But right now, just a lot of the talks, like it's on the paper stage, right? The militaries always have contingencies for everything, but it's really unnecessary. I mean, especially for Australia, they're the ones whose economic lifeline is going to get threatened by a war, and yet they're paying for it. But yeah, here we are because their leader cannot say no to United States because there's Australia have this complex because they're being the white colonies out there hanging off on the side of Asia. They're, to their north, there's like 200 million Indonesians, right? Just like they're always scared that the horde of Asians is gonna come down and take them over, and they feel like United States and Big Brother is their one last hope. And it's very rational. But the irrational fear is pushing them to do all these things not advantageous to themselves.
Yeah. But you will think they will learn that the US is not going to come to their defense. They're going to be in front line. At the same time, China is already, I would not be surprised, China is already has a plan for the South China Sea, the Malacca, especially the Malacca Strait. I am certain they've already have a plan in place just in case, because that's one of the things the US and its allies in the region will focus on, literally trying to choke China through the Malacca Strait. But I don't think so it's going to work.
I don't think that's realistic, because how do you has US Navy ever practiced to choke off the Malacca Strait? No. How do you practice? The problem is you're still going to stop every ship on the Malacca Strait to check whether they're Chinese or going to China. They're essentially going to stop all the maritime traffic through Malacca Strait. And by now, you're not just blockading trade to China. You're blockading all the East Asia. You're blockading half the world, and that makes you an enemy not just of China but all of East Asia. So it's kind of ridiculous to even think about it. But China's strategy of Belt and Road Project and building ports everywhere is to build redundancy. It's not so if we don't, for some reason, we can't use Strait of Malacca anymore, well, we can still travel through the Arctic route to go to Russia. We can still go elsewhere. We can travel across the Pacific to Peru. The whole point of Belt and Road Initiative is build redundancy. So there's no one singular choke point for U.S. Navy, because U.S. Navy cannot be at all places at all time. They don't have the resource for that. And this is what the U.S. calls the China's string of pearl strategy. The pearl is scattered all over the world. You can't just focus on one particular spot.
Yeah, well, and speaking of this Malacca, while I'm thinking about it, if the U.S. even thinking in these terms, we couldn't even deal with the Houthis in the Red Sea. What makes us think we can be dealing with? I mean, I'm not laughing here, because to me it's the stupidity in Washington that they don't forethink in terms of by 2030 China will have over 430 type of naval ships. What have we built? So, and it's kind of like
right now, I think they are brainstorming all kinds of scenarios, but it's not hinged on reality. Recently Matt Waltz, a new news advisor to Trump, he has said the way to resolve the issue in Gaza and Ukraine is we got to choke off Iran's oil revenue. And since 90% of the Iran's oil export is to China, we're gonna force China to stop China from buying Iranian oil and gas. Like, Why would China listen to you? Like right now, United States is always demanding China, you do this, you do this, you do this. But why? Why should China do as you say? I mean, they still think they can dictate to the rest of the world, even to countries like China and Russia, what to do. But that era is gone. They have to come to realize they live in the 21st century now. They can't be dictating it to anybody. They cannot speak to China from the position of strength. Like the former Chinese diplomat said, United States in no position to speak to us from a position of strength.
That's true. That reminds me of your post on X. Let me share it with the audience here, just with the community. Just for you guys, if you follow Carl on X, Twitter, he's at Carl Zha. Just follow him there, guys, because he posts some interesting stuff, and I read them regularly. Here's one I'm going to share with you, just for you guys to see, in line with what Carl just mentioned. Check this out. You remember this one, Carl? When the German foreign minister, German, and I quote, the German foreign minister has warned Beijing of consequences for allegedly supporting Moscow. How delusional these people are. It's crazy. It is crazy. So, well, Carl, I can't thank you. Let me see, first of all, if there's a question here. No, I'll take one here. But before I do this, I want to say thank you to Juniper Lee. Thank you so much for your super sticker. Truly appreciate you. And Danny Tadashi, thank you so much for your super sticker. Truly appreciate you. And I'll take this question from Doggy5. Question: Singapore's former prime minister just went to China and met with Xi Jinping to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Changzhou Industrial Park. What is the geopolitical significance of this?
Well, Suzhou Industrial Park has been kind of the baby of Singapore government for the longest time. This is where China basically just gave up this piece of land in Suzhou, say, hey, like Singapore, we saw that you did a great job in your own country. We want you to replicate your success. Just make it a joint project between you and me. We will provide the land and you will provide the management. And this is how Suzhou is one of the most developed city in China right now. I mean, it's just like 30 minutes north of Shanghai. And it's one of the flagship project of Singapore's investment into China. This is not just private business. This is like a Singapore government committed project to build out this industrial park in Suzhou. This has been in existence for 30 years. So this is the time for Singapore. Actually, it's an opportunity for the Singapore government to reaffirm their ties with China. Singapore people don't realize Singapore and China, they only normalized ties like in the 1990s. Pretty late. But for the past 30 years, they have worked very closely together. And Singapore is also one of those Southeast Asian nations that have very close tie with United States, right? But at the same time, has very deep economic integration with China, and like they can serve a sort of a bridge to like kind of the East and the West, and a conduit also for example for China to pass information through to the United States. So sometimes they might not listen to the Chinese official, maybe they will listen to the Singaporean officials. And right now, most of the Southeast Asia, whether Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, they all want to work with China. They don't want to have a war. They don't want to be put in a situation where they have to choose between United States and China. This is a message that U.S. government need to understand, is it's the U.S. right now that's forcing people to choose. You are either with us or against us. Most of them like, look, why don't we just do business? Why can't we just trade? We want to trade with everyone. Most of Southeast Asia, they want to be enemy of none and friends to all, and that's a great policy. And Singapore, I think, kind of exemplifies this because for its own reasons, Singapore has a very deep cultural ties with China, and he very much like to see its own investment in China take off, continue to flourish. So he does not want to jeopardize that by having like a U.S.-China conflict. This is no in interest of almost nobody in East Asia, except for very few in Washington and very few arms dealers in United States.
That's true. That is true. I want to say thank you quickly to George Choi here. Thank you so much for your super secret. I truly appreciate you being here. So, well, Carl, I can't thank you enough, my friend, for really carving out time for us here to share your knowledge, your insights, your analysis. It's always enlightening to have a conversation with you. I always come out with something new to learn about, and I greatly appreciate you. On behalf of the entire community, we say thank you to you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Wait for me here. Let me say, all right, guys, hope you enjoyed this conversation with Carl. It's always very insightful. I never want you to miss this monthly conversation that Carl and we came to the decision to do on a monthly basis. It's a knowledge you're not going to get anywhere else. And Carl has a lot of knowledge to share. So, and I did see some comments there that I had to remove those individuals, because if you are not to contribute to the conversation, I will kick you out. I have no quarrel about doing that. So, and I can't tell who's who, but anyway, hope you enjoyed it. By the way, guys, remember to join me tomorrow for our community conversation, the monthly one I'm going to be doing tomorrow at 12:15 Central Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. As always, remember, geopolitics impacts your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.